How could something as small as an indicator light, a single bolt, or a misunderstood instruction change the course of an entire flight? Stay tuned. The stories behind 15 key moments in aviation history. Turkish Airlines Flight 981. On March 3, 1974, a minor technical issue escalated into one of aviation's most significant incidents. Turkish Airlines Flight 981, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, was scheduled to fly from Istanbul to London Heathrow with a stop at Paris Orly Airport. The first part of the journey proceeded without incident. However, shortly after departing Orly at 12:32 p.m. local time, a serious mechanical failure occurred. While flying over Meaux, around 30 miles northeast of Paris, the aircraft's rear cargo door malfunctioned. The sudden pressure loss damaged part of the cabin floor, affecting 6 passengers and severing the cables that controlled the rudder, elevators, and second engine. As a result, the aircraft's nose pitched downward at a steep angle and the speed increased rapidly. Despite the flight crew's efforts to regain control, the aircraft descended and impacted the Ermenonville forest 77 seconds later at nearly 486 miles per hour. Sadly, all 346 individuals on board, including 11 crew members and 335 passengers, lost their lives. Investigations revealed a design flaw in the cargo door locking mechanism, which allowed the door to appear secure even when it was not properly fastened. Additionally, on the day of the incident, a baggage handler named Mohammed Mahmoudi was responsible for closing the door, relying on an indicator light that incorrectly showed the door was locked. At an altitude of 11,000 feet, the door failed, leading to the rapid decompression. But Turkish Airlines Flight 981 wasn't the only flight where a small mechanical detail had devastating consequences. What happens when a simple landing gear light leads to an even bigger disaster? United Airlines Flight 173. On December 28, 1978, United Airlines Flight 173, a McDonnell Douglas DC-8-61, was traveling from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York to Portland International Airport, with a stop in Denver. After departing Denver, at approximately 2:47 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, the aircraft carried about 46,700 pounds of fuel, exceeding the required 31,900 pounds for the next leg. As the flight neared Portland, the crew encountered an issue. Lowering the landing gear caused an unusual vibration, and the indicator light confirming full deployment failed to illuminate. Concerned, the pilots entered a holding pattern over the city to assess the problem. During the next hour, with the landing gear extended and flaps partially deployed, the aircraft burned fuel at an increased rate. Unfortunately, the flight crew did not closely monitor fuel levels. As a result, all 4 engines lost power due to fuel exhaustion. At around 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the aircraft made an emergency descent into a wooded residential area near Northeast 157th Avenue and East Burnside Street, approximately 6 nautical miles southeast of Portland International Airport. Of the 189 people on board, 10 lives were lost, including 8 passengers, the flight engineer, and a flight attendant. The remaining passengers and crew survived, though several sustained injuries. And yet, even decades later, technology couldn't fully shield passengers from risk. What if a brand new plane, fresh off the production line, faced critical issues no one expected? Ethiopian Airlines Flight 322. On March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, departed Addis Ababa Bole International Airport, bound for Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, Kenya. Just 6 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft crashed near Bushaftu, resulting in the loss of all 157 people on board, with victims from over 30 countries, including 32 Kenyans, 18 Canadians, and 8 Americans. This was the second crash involving a Boeing 737 MAX 8 within 5 months, following Lion Air Flight 610. The Ethiopian Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau led the inquiry, supported by the United States National Transportation Safety Board and France's Bureau of Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation Safety. The final report, released on December 23, 2022, found that a faulty angle of attack sensor fed erroneous data to the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MANCAS, causing repeated nose-down inputs and a loss of control. Despite the pilot's efforts to follow emergency procedures, recovery efforts were unsuccessful. Following the crash, the Boeing 737 MAX fleet was grounded globally for about 20 months. Boeing later introduced software updates to MKS, improved pilot training, and revised flight manuals. While mechanical problems captured headlines, another danger lurked deep within, one that started not in the cockpit but in the cargo hold. ValueJet Flight 5-92. On May 11, 1996, ValueJet Flight 592, a McDonnell Douglas DC-932, departed from Miami International Airport bound for Atlanta. Approximately 10 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft encountered an in-flight emergency and subsequently came down in the Florida Everglades, leading to the tragic loss of all 110 passengers and crew members. The National Transportation Safety Board determined that a fire in the forward cargo compartment caused the accident. The fire was ignited by chemical oxygen generators that had been improperly packaged and stored by SaberTech, the airline's maintenance contractor. During the loading process, the generators were accidentally activated, releasing intense heat and oxygen that fueled the fire. In response to the accident, the Federal Aviation Administration mandated the installation of smoke detectors and automatic fire suppression systems in the cargo holds of all commercial aircraft. Additionally, regulations governing the transportation of hazardous materials were significantly strengthened to enhance aviation safety and prevent future incidents. However, not every incident stems from mechanical faults. Sometimes the greatest dangers are rooted in misunderstandings far beyond the cockpit, even reaching into the highest levels of global tension. Before we continue, I have a special 10-second request for all of you listening. If you can help me in any way, just press the notification bell and hit that subscribe button. It means the world. It really supports this channel, and if you do that for me, I promise my team and I will do everything we can to make this show even better for you. Deal? Now back to Korean Airlines Flight 7. During the Cold War, heightened political tensions and advanced air defense systems made certain border regions particularly dangerous for aviation. Between 1950 and 1970, approximately 15 United States military aircraft were lost due to actions by Soviet forces, while American forces brought down 3 Soviet planes. On September 1, 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007, a Boeing 747-230 Bravo, was traveling from New York City to Seoul with a scheduled stop in Anchorage, Alaska. After departing Anchorage, the aircraft unintentionally deviated from its intended flight path, entering Soviet airspace over the Kamchatka Peninsula and later over Sakhalin Island. In response, a Soviet Su-15 interceptor, piloted by Major Gennady Osipovich, was dispatched and launched 2 missiles, resulting in the aircraft coming down over the Sea of Japan near Monoran Island. Unfortunately, all 269 individuals on board lost their lives, including United States Congressman Lawrence McDonald. The incident sparked international outrage. United States President Ronald Reagan condemned the attack, calling it a crime against humanity. Many experts believe this event brought the United States and the Soviet Union closer to confrontation than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you think modern aircraft are invincible, think again. What happens when a forgotten repair comes back years later to cause the unthinkable? Stay tuned. Japan Airlines Flight 123. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 departed Tokyo's Haneda Airport for Osaka's Itami Airport. Just 4 minutes after takeoff, a critical failure occurred. The rear pressure bulkhead, essential for maintaining cabin pressure, ruptured. This caused a sudden depressurization that separated the tail fin from the aircraft and disabled all 4 hydraulic systems, severely limiting the pilot's ability to control the plane. For the next 32 minutes, the crew made continuous efforts to stabilize the aircraft. Despite their determination, the plane ultimately descended and impacted terrain near Mount Takamahara, close to Mount Osataka. Out of 524 people on board, 509 lost their lives, while 4 survived. Subsequent investigations revealed that the failure stemmed from an improper repair made 7 years earlier following a tailstrike incident in 1978. This maintenance error critically weakened the bulkhead. As a result, global aviation authorities implemented stricter aircraft repair regulations to help prevent similar incidents in the future. Have you ever heard of this crash before? Do you think more lives could have been saved with faster rescue efforts? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Air France Flight 447. On May 31, 2009, Air France Flight 447 departed Rio de Janeiro's Galeão International Airport, heading to Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport. On board were 216 passengers and 12 crew members. After climbing to 35,000 feet, the flight continued smoothly along the Brazilian coast before crossing into the Atlantic Ocean, beyond radar coverage. Weather conditions featured typical early summer turbulence and storm clouds. Shortly before 2 o'clock in the morning on June 1st, the captain left the cockpit to rest. Minutes later, ice crystals blocked the pitot tubes, causing unreliable airspeed readings. At 2:10, the autopilot and autothrottle disengaged, forcing the pilots to take manual control amid confusing instrument data. The airspeed indicators dropped sharply, and the aircraft unintentionally climbed to 38,000 feet. Despite the pilot's efforts to regain control, the cockpit became overwhelmed with stall warnings and system alerts. Critical checklist procedures were missed, and the aircraft entered a deep aerodynamic stall. Within minutes, Air France Flight 447 was lost over the Atlantic Ocean, leading to the loss of everyone on board. Investigations later concluded that a combination of technical failures, weather conditions, and human factors contributed to one of aviation's most tragic accidents. Yet, even under clear skies and smooth approaches, hidden flaws can surface in an instant. What caused a routine landing to end in total loss without warning? U.S. Airways Flight 427. On September 8, 1994, U.S. Airways Flight 427, a Boeing 737, was approaching Pittsburgh International Airport when the incident struck. Without warning, the aircraft rolled sharply to the left, descended nearly 5,000 feet, and impacted the ground near Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, resulting in the loss of all 132 people on board. At first, investigators were puzzled. The aircraft's black box revealed that the rudder had suddenly shifted fully to the left, initiating an uncontrollable roll. However, disagreement soon followed. U.S. Airways blamed aircraft design flaws, while Boeing pointed to pilot error. After nearly 5 years of investigation, the National Transportation Safety Board concluded that a jammed valve in the rudder control system had caused the rudder to reverse unexpectedly. Tragically, when the pilots attempted corrective action, the rudder instead moved further left. In response, Boeing invested approximately $500 million to retrofit 2,800 Boeing 737 aircraft worldwide. Furthermore, after conflicts between the airline and the families of the victims, Congress passed the Aviation Disaster Family Assistance Act, assigning survivor support services to the National Transportation Safety Board. But what if an aircraft never even had a chance? What happens when a threat comes not from nature nor mechanics, but from forces on the ground? Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 departed from Amsterdam Airport Schiphol, lifting off 16 minutes later than its scheduled departure time of 12:15 in the afternoon. The Boeing aircraft was bound for Kuala Lumpur, carrying 283 passengers, including 80 children along with 15 crew members. From much of the journey, the flight cruised smoothly at 33,000 feet. However, at approximately 4:20 in the afternoon, an incident unfolded. A surface-to-air missile, launched from a location southeast of the aircraft's position, detonated just outside the plane, slightly above and to the left of the cockpit. The explosion caused severe damage to the flight deck, resulting in the deaths of the 3 crew members stationed there and critically compromising the aircraft. The plane disintegrated during descent and came down near the village of Hrubov in Donetsk Oblast, eastern Ukraine. Following an extensive investigation, the International Joint Investigation Team determined that the missile system, a Buk surface-to-air missile, had been transported from Russian territory and was fired from an area controlled by Russian-backed separatists. The incident led to the loss of all 298 lives on board and prompted widespread international condemnation. And speaking of dangers from outside the plane, what if a single suitcase could change global aviation security forever? Stay tuned. Lockerbie bombing. On December 21, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103, a Boeing 747, departed from London Heathrow Airport, heading to New York City. As the aircraft climbed along its northerly route, it suffered an in-flight explosion over the town of Lockerbie in the Dumfries and Galloway region of southwest Scotland. The incident resulted in the loss of 270 lives, including 11 residents on the ground, with victims from 21 different countries. Initial investigations considered mechanical failure, but evidence soon revealed that a bomb had detonated. It had been hidden inside a radio cassette player packed in a suitcase in the forward cargo hold. The explosion caused a breach approximately 50 centimeters wide in the fuselage. No emergency procedures were initiated, and no distress calls were made. Only a 180-millimeter hissing sound was recorded, as the blast disabled the aircraft's communication systems. Following the incident, international aviation authorities, including the International Civil Aviation Organization and the United States Federal Aviation Administration, introduced stricter baggage screening protocols. These standards later became the foundation for modern explosive detection methods, further strengthened by the Transportation Security Administration. Did you know a single bag changed aviation forever? Should airlines be doing more to screen cargo today? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and follow the channel to discover more interesting things. Charkhi Dadri mid-air collision. On November 12, 1996, an incident struck the skies over northern India. Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 19007 and Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763 made mid-air contact near Charkhi Dadri, about 100 kilometers west of Delhi. At approximately 6:40 in the evening, the Kazakhstan aircraft was instructed to maintain 14,000 feet while descending toward Delhi. However, moments later, the crew reported being at 15,000 feet, 46 miles from the airport. Air traffic control warned of a Saudi Arabian Boeing 747 approaching on a reciprocal course. But despite repeated updates, the Kazakhstan flight mistakenly descended below its assigned altitude. Within seconds, the two aircraft made contact. Both planes suffered catastrophic damage, and debris was dispersed across mustard and cotton fields below. Unfortunately, all 349 passengers and crew members on both flights lost their lives. Following the investigation, authorities cited miscommunication, largely due to language barriers, as a leading cause. As a result, international aviation regulators made English proficiency mandatory for pilots and air traffic controllers worldwide. Additionally, the incident accelerated the global implementation of traffic collision avoidance systems to improve mid-air safety. Air India Flight 182. For decades, commercial aircraft have been targeted by those seeking mass casualties, and Air India Flight 1812 became one of the examples. On June 23, 1985, the Boeing 747 was traveling from Canada to India, with a stopover scheduled in London, when it exploded mid-air off the southwest coast of Ireland near Cork. The incident resulted in the loss of all 329 lives on board, including 268 Canadian citizens, most of Indian descent, and 24 Indian nationals. Investigators confirmed that a bomb hidden inside a suitcase had been loaded onto the flight, even though the ticket holder never boarded. Meanwhile, as Flight 182 remained airborne, an explosion occurred at Tokyo's Narita Airport, resulting in the deaths of 2 Japanese baggage handlers. Authorities linked this event to a second device intended for another Air India flight bound for Bangkok, which detonated prematurely. Following extensive investigations, Canadian officials concluded that Sikh separatists, retaliating for the Indian Army's Operation Blue Star at the Golden Temple, orchestrated both attacks. The incident of Flight 182 remains the worst act of aviation terrorism involving a Canadian airline, and led to significant global changes in airport security and baggage screening protocols. Yet sometimes it's the hidden threats within the cabin that pose the greatest risk. How could a tiny flame grow into a race against time? Air Canada Flight 797. On June 2, 1983, Air Canada Flight 797 was en route from Dallas, Texas to Toronto, Canada. For most of the journey, the flight was uneventful. However, as the aircraft crossed American airspace, the cabin crew detected smoke emerging from a lavatory. Believing they could manage the situation, they attempted to extinguish the hidden fire before contacting air traffic control. As the smoke continued to build and visibility worsened, the pilots declared an emergency and diverted to Greater Cincinnati International Airport in Ohio. Critically, the fire had already affected many cockpit instruments, forcing the pilots to perform an emergency landing with severely limited visibility. Upon touchdown, airport fire crews responded immediately. Flight attendants opened the forward doors, assisting passengers in evacuating as quickly as possible, while the captain and first officer exited through their cockpit windows. Unfortunately, about 90 seconds after the exits were opened, the interior was overtaken by fire, preventing further evacuation. In total, 23 lives were lost in the accident. The accident led to significant improvements in fire safety standards, including mandatory smoke detectors and automatic fire extinguishers in airplane lavatories, measures that continue to protect passengers today. Lion Air Flight 6-10. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, departed Soekarno-Hatta International Airport in Jakarta, bound for Depati Amir Airport in Pangkal Pinang. 13 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft crashed into the Java Sea, resulting in the loss of all 189 lives on board. This was the first major accident involving the Boeing 737 MAX series and the first incident involving any Boeing 737 model. Investigations by Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee revealed a critical flaw in the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MANCAS. Relying on a single faulty angle of attack sensor, MCAS repeatedly pushed the nose down, leading to loss of control. Pilots were not trained on MCAS, as it was omitted from manuals and training programs. Maintenance errors also played a role. A replacement sensor was miscalibrated and not corrected. Under pressure from multiple cockpit alarms, the crew struggled to respond effectively, highlighting weaknesses in crew resource management. Regulatory shortcomings were also identified, as the Federal Aviation Administration's certification process did not fully address vulnerabilities introduced by MCAS. Following this crash in the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 incident months later, the Boeing 737 MAX fleet was grounded globally. Boeing responded with software updates, enhanced pilot training, and revisions to flight manuals. Finally, all roads lead to the worst day in aviation history. How did a chain of missteps, fog, and fatal misunderstandings result in the worst runway event ever recorded? Tenar Airport Incident. On March 27, 1977, two heavily loaded Boeing 747s, one operated by KLM and the other by Pan American World Airways, collided on the runway at Los Rodeos Airport on the island of Tenerife. Both aircraft had been diverted from Gran Canaria Airport after a bomb attack injured 8 people. With fears of a second device, all incoming flights were rerouted to the smaller Los Rodeos Airport, which had only one runway, a parallel taxiway, and limited parking. The airport quickly became overwhelmed, and with only 2 air traffic controllers on duty, confusion escalated. The KLM flight, arriving from Amsterdam Schiphol, carried 234 passengers and 14 crew members. Meanwhile, the Pan Am flight, originating in Los Angeles with a stop in New York, John F. Kennedy Airport, carried 380 passengers and 16 crew members. As operations grew chaotic, Pan Am was instructed to taxi and exit at the 3rd taxiway. However, due to heavy fog and unclear instructions, the aircraft missed the turn and continued toward the 4th exit. Meanwhile, the KLM aircraft, after refueling against the advice of the flight engineer and first officer, taxied into position. Misunderstanding a tower transmission, the KLM captain initiated takeoff without knowing Pan Am was still on the runway. Despite emergency maneuvers, the KLM aircraft's lower fuselage struck Pan Am's upper fuselage, causing a fire that spread rapidly. All 248 people on the KLM flight and 335 on the Pan Am flight lost their lives. Only 61 survived, marking the worst accident in commercial aviation history. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I hope you'll love this content. Comment below about the next topic you'd like to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being with us. Leave a comment, like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you next time.